And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today's April the 15th, 105th day of the year. Just 260 days remaining to the year's over with, and we'll be starting a new one. Well, holidays and observances, just a few of those. It's National Laundry Day. Simplified daily chores, washing garments with ease, bringing freshness to fabrics. International Micro Volunteering Day. I can't talk this morning. One Boston Day, Father Damien Day, and a day that strikes fear in the hearts of many folks. It is Tax Day. If you haven't filed your taxes or filed an extension, you've got the rest of this day to get it done and hope for the best. Well, on that note, let us see what stories we have in the news because, as I always say, there's something going on every day. President Trump's negotiating team been praised by nuclear experts for walking away from the Pakistan talks. Well, the second round of talks likely to take place between the U.S. and Iran's regime this week over the illicit nuclear weapons programs. Leading experts on Tehran's programs say the Trump administration was right to walk away. After nearly a day of talks, Vice President Vance's team pulled the plug on the negotiations taking place in Pakistan, something that was welcomed by the experts in this field. U.S. Team was wise to walk away once it became clear the Iranians wouldn't agree to Washington's core nuclear demands. Tehran's maintaining enriched uranium stocks and uranium enrichment capabilities provides it with a pathway to nuclear weapons. Plain and simple, according to Andrea Stryker, Deputy Director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's Non-Proliferation Program. Core dispute between the U.S. and Iran is over Tehran's desire to enrich uranium, material used to build nuclear weapons. Now, excuse me. Queen Elizabeth's aide, nicknamed AK-47, clashed with Prince Harry in an explosive tiara-gate, according to experts. Queen Elizabeth II's fiercest protector, who earned the nickname AK-47, would take a bullet for the monarch, royal experts claimed. This devotion later put her on a collision course with Meghan Markle during the infamous tiara-gate. Angela Kelly was the real deal, a friend who would take a bullet for the Queen, according to British broadcaster and photographer Helena Chard. And it's telling. Palace insiders called her AK-47 after the assault rifle because people felt threatened by her. It was influential enough to take people out of Buckingham Palace. It's been said the late Queen's devoted dresser was no nonsense, especially when it came to royal protocol. Meghan Markle was on a collision course as she wasn't adhering to the long-standing traditions, which ruffled many feathers among a lot of the staff members. That's according to British royal expert Hilary Fordrich. Angela was loyal to proper protocol and was the enforcer of such. Her dedication and duration of service meant she ended up shaping the presentation of the monarchy and was a gatekeeper regarding access. Her influence really impacted the optics. Fordich and Chard's statements came after Kelly, the Queen's longtime assistant, advisor, and curator, gave a rare interview to Vanity Fair correspondent and royal author Katie Nicholl. She, Meghan Markle walked in thinking she was something special. She was a star. She was going to be the future queen when Harry took the throne. And it all came tumbling down. Well, dangerous water warnings hit trendy vacation spots after a powerful storm pounded the area. Hawaii health officials have issued multiple brown water advisories across the islands as the state deals with the aftermath of a Kona low storm. Storm moved through the islands earlier this week, bringing heavy rainfall and runoff that's kept coastal waters contaminated in several areas, as according to the Hawaii Department of Health Clean Water Branch. Officials say the advisories are layered on top of lingering impacts from an already wet March. This was the third Kona low storm in a month, according to Fox Weather. The advisories remain in place across several islands, including an island-wide warning on Kauai and multiple affected areas of Oahu, Maui, and the Big Island, according to the department. The warnings came as visitors continued to arrive in Hawaii during the spring travel season. That's when the beaches are a major draw for tourists. Health officials warn that brown water conditions can pose serious risks to swimmers and surfers. According to the department, if the water's brown, turn around. Don't go in. Runoff from heavy rain can carry sewage and pesticides and animal waste into the ocean, increasing the risk of exposure to bacteria such as E. coli and salmonella. Storm conditions can also wash debris into coastal waters, or murky conditions may attract marine life, including sharks. Well, President Trump blasted close ally Meloni, says she's failing the U.S. on Iran. Tensions between Donald Trump and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni escalated Tuesday after the president publicly rebuked one of his closest European allies, accusing her of lacking courage and failing to support Washington's efforts against Iran. In a phone interview with Italian daily newspaper, Corriere della Sera, Trump called Meloni unacceptable and said he was shocked by her stance, according to the outlet's English language version. The dispute with Trump was further fueled by Meloni's criticism of his recent remarks targeting Pope Leo XIV, which she called unacceptable, prompting Trump to respond that she's the one who's unacceptable. Well, tensions are still rising with a number of European allies. 80s icons Heather Locklear and Lorenzo Lamas are officially together after decades of high-profile romances with other people. 80s stars Lamas and Heather Locklear were reportedly in love. Representative from Lamas confirmed to E! News the pair are seeing each other. Locklear and Lamas have been a rumored couple since TMZ pushed photos of them celebrating New Year's Eve together in Las Vegas. Representatives of Locklear and Lamas didn't immediately respond to Fox News' request for comment. Last May, Locklear ended her 5-year relationship engagement to Chris Heiser. 2021, Locklear told People that a marriage to Heiser just not so important to her. We're together and we love each other and support each other, and really that's all that matters, she said at the time. So we'll see what comes of it. I mean, Locklear and Lamas have a long history of relationships with other folks. Melrose Place actress was married to Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee from 86 to 93, a pairing that drew major media attention during the height of both of their careers. 1994, she married Bon Jovi guitarist Richie Sambora. The couple had a daughter before eventually divorcing in 2007. Over the years, Locklear has also been linked to several other figures, including an engagement to her Melrose Place co-star Jack Wagner. And Lamas has had a notably eventful relationship history as well. He's been married 5 times. First married to Victoria Hilbert in the early 80s, followed by a marriage to publicist Michelle Cathy Smith. Later married actress Kathleen Kenmont in 1989, and after her divorce, married Playboy playmate Shauna Sand in 96. They had 3 daughters before separating in the early 2000s. 2011, Lamas married Shauna Craig, though they eventually divorced as well. Well, you need to find the one that you're happy with. I can tell you stories that would absolutely curl your hair. Well, we'll see what, for those that are fascinated by Walmart, one of El Paso's is closing, according to the latest news I've seen. In fact, a number of companies are closing locations through 2026. Some companies are trimming underperforming stores to strengthen profitability. Others are downsizing after bankruptcies or strategic pivots toward e-commerce. And let me tell you, e-commerce is going to get bigger as time goes on. No question about that. Well, there we go. Disgruntled worker invokes Luigi Mangione in a $500 million warehouse inferno he filmed in an anti-capitalist rage. What happened to my system? Everything's shut down. There we go. Well, the disgruntled Inland Empire employee been accused of causing a $500 million in damage. He invoked Luigi Mangione as he filmed himself torching a warehouse as he railed against wages, authorities said. Shamel Abdulkarim, 29, of Highland, California, is charged with deliberately setting the April 7th inferno that destroyed a 1.2 million square foot Kimberly Clark distribution center in Ontario. Pleaded not guilty Monday to federal and state charges. According to Department of Justice, a criminal complaint, Abdulkarim, who worked at the facility through a third-party logistics provider, filmed himself setting multiple pallets of paper goods on fire in the early morning hours. In the video, he allegedly complained about wages, saying, "If you're not going to pay us enough to live, at least pay us enough not to do this," as he set the fires. Federal prosecutors say the flames quickly spread, collapsing the roof and leveling the entire facility with stored household products like Kleenex and Cottonelle. Investigators alleged that he later bragged about the destruction in text and phone calls, including one message that read, "I just cost these," and an expletive that was not repeated, "billions," while railing against corporate profits and shareholders. Well, he probably lost a job over this. Well, next, Biden officials under fire as pay-to-play allegations emerged in a top gubernatorial race. Former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, a Democrat running for governor in Georgia, has faced ethics-related scrutiny during her time in government. That hadn't stopped Bottoms' ambition for higher office, though. Before launching her gubernatorial bid, she drew criticism in Atlanta for her use of public resources while serving in city government, from taxpayer-funded mailers packed with photos of herself to city-paid travel expenses initially covered her husband's Super Bowl airfare. I've seen a lot of strange things done by elected officials. Bottoms also drew criticism over her ties to a contractor that later landed a lucrative city contract after she signed an initial consulting contract with that firm while leading the Atlanta Fulton County Recreation Authority. And just days before leaving the city council, she is preparing to become mayor, with the company's CEO later donating to and fundraising for her campaign. Well, as long as there's all that big money floating around, you're going to continue to see a lot of corruption. Well, Todd Blanche torches Trump foe Boasberg. He's a judge who has done everything in his power to disrupt President Trump's agenda. After the appeals court blocks that judge again in a deportation fight, Todd Blanche, of course, is acting attorney general. And it's Judge James Boasberg. He accused the judge of targeting DOJ attorneys after an appellate court rebuked the Obama-appointed judge a second time in an ongoing immigration case. Today's decision by the D.C. Circuit should finally end Judge Boasberg's year-long campaign against the hardworking Department of attorneys doing their jobs fighting illegal immigrants. Boasberg has taken a position, intentionally or unintentionally, that if Trump is for it, he's against it. Well, the Colorado highways descended into chaos after a massive 75-vehicle pileup. Well, I had to stop there for a second. I went into a sneezing fest. Well, as I was saying, the Colorado highways descended into chaos after a massive 75-vehicle pileup amid hazardous weather conditions. It was a massive chain reaction pileup on the Colorado highway Tuesday. Crashes unfolded in the Rocky Mountains west of Denver, specifically near Loveland Ski area, and followed a chaotic morning. It saw 6 separate wrecks, mostly along that same highway, according to the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office. Officials said the latest crash forced a two-way lane shutdown on Interstate 70. Photos released by the authorities showed emergency crews assisting drivers at the scene. And they said the closure was due to a severe multi-vehicle crash on the east side of Eisenhower Johnson Memorial Tunnel. Took place this afternoon, according to the Colorado Department of Transportation. Currently, no estimated time for reopening. They had a major mess on their hands. Well, if you remember, there was a story about a baby Jessica who fell down a well. Well, she's back in the news now, some 40 years later. She was arrested in Texas after an alleged domestic disturbance. Jessica McClure Morales, the woman who rose to global prominence as baby Jessica in 1987 when she was rescued after falling into a well as an 18-month-old, was just arrested in Midland County, Texas, after an alleged domestic disturbance. Morales, who's now 40 years old, was taken into custody Saturday night by the Midland County Sheriff's Office at her home in Midland County. To the station, KMID, KPEJ, says Morales was charged with assault causing bodily injury involving family violence and later was released from the Midland County Detention Center after posting bail. Sheriff's Office confirmed the arrest to Fox 4 in Dallas-Fort Worth. Well, Swalwell and Gonzalez resignations prompt a bipartisan push to purge House members accused of misconduct. U.S. House Representatives lost 2 members and gained another on Tuesday as disgraced Representatives Eric Swalwell, Democrat of California, the man who wanted to be king, and Tony Gonzalez, Republican of Texas, both resigned. Representative Clay Fuller, a Republican who won the special election last week to fill the seat vacated earlier this year by Marjorie Taylor Greene, was sworn into office the same day. But the turmoil in Congress's lower chamber is ongoing as 2 lawmakers from Florida, Democrat Sheila Sheriff-Phyllis McCormick and Republican Corey Mills, also face pressure to resign. Representative Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat of New York, indicated she was glad Swalwell and Gonzalez were departing. Says she thought Mills should also probably be on that list as well. And that coming from our resident bartender. Ocasio-Cortez also indicated she thinks Sheriff-Phyllis McCormick should resign or be expelled from Congress. Well, we'll see what comes of that. Well, where you live could shape your risk of cancer mortality, a new study suggested. While U.S. cancer deaths have been falling over the past couple of decades, certain parts of the country are seeing less improvement in those numbers. New research published in the British Journal of Cancer assessed the differences in cancer mortality and improvements across the country. Researchers at Mississippi State Social Science Research Center, along with the scientists at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, analyzed death certificates between 1981 and 2019 across nearly 3,000 U.S. counties. Data was drawn from wide-ranging online data for epidemiologic research, which is operated by the CDC. 21.3 million cancer deaths were included in the records. Overall, U.S. cancer mortality has declined by about 32% between 1991 and 2019. Not all areas experienced that level of improvement. The highest rates of mortality decline and the biggest drop in excess deaths were seen in urban, coastal, and higher income counties, according to the study. Rural and lower income counties had smaller declines in mortality. Well, that just goes back to the old rule. The more money you have, the better chances you have of surviving the unsurvivable, so to speak. Well, Meta reportedly is building an AI version of Mark Zuckerberg to interact with company employees. It's strangest thing. One Zuckerberg's not enough. We got to have a second one. That's part of the company's AI integration. According to a report from the Financial Times, Meta's been developing photorealistic interactive characters for a while, but recently begun prioritizing an AI-powered version of Zuckerberg to interact with employees. This AI character is related to being trained on Zuckerberg's mannerisms and company strategies to help employees connect with the CEO. He's too important himself to deal with the little people, don't you know? He's been increasingly hands-off with training the AI characters, according to the Financial Times, spending 5 to 10 hours per week working on different AI projects for the company. A person familiar with the matter told Financial Times that the program, if successful, could also expand to influencers and content creators. Well, it was fascinating. I took a course regarding AI. Absolutely fascinating information. Well, your favorite fast food application is playing mind games with you and charging you for the privilege. Dealing with fast food, if you're a fast food junkie, you didn't suddenly get hungry, you just got charged more. So remember, between tapping your phone and hearing that familiar order complete chime, your $8 fast food meal quietly ballooned into $20 or more. And it's not just inflation, it's something far more calculated by the fast food giants. This is the age of fee stacking. Just like Ticketmaster. The latest and most egregious offender, the small order fee. Sounds like a harmless thing, almost reasonable. A small fee, if you don't spend enough, there's an extra charge, not a big deal, but for hardworking Americans, it is a big deal. Well, we've been talking the last couple of shows about mysterious disappearances, and there's been a lot of them. Every year in this country alone, over 100,000 people disappear. Now, 7 out of 10 do it intentionally. What a lot of folks call a poor man's divorce. They just pack up and go. But 3 out of 10, they walk out the door and never get to the other side of the door. They just vanished in amazing ways. We're going to talk about some unsolved mysteries that have been hanging around for quite some time. Now, this first case is one of the most mysterious. It's like any other day when Austin dropped his son, 6-year-old Theo, off at school for his kindergarten class. Without Austin's knowledge, Theo's mother, Anna, arrived at the school soon after he left and took the boy out of class, saying there was a family emergency. Now, there was no family emergency. Instead, the two headed off to complete some errands, including dropping off Anna's vehicle at a repair shop. And after that, one of the employees took them to the zoo. Mother and son spent most of the day walking around the zoo together, which might sound like a pleasant afternoon, but it was, after all, going to take a turn for the worse. By 3 p.m. that afternoon, Anna and Theo were back at the repair shop picking up the car. But instead of going home, they headed out to spend the night at a resort. Now, Austin, on the other hand, had no idea where his wife or son had gone because nobody told him Anna had taken Theo, likely assuming the father knew. He went to school to pick him up after class, and that was when he realized Theo wasn't there. Frightened, Austin began trying to find him, called Anna's phone over and over, but she never answered, and he frankly didn't know where to look. Around the time the incident occurred, the couple's relationship was a bit rocky. Anna occasionally had bouts of depression, which she took medication for, and she had recently been considering a divorce from Austin. But despite that, her actions seemed to come out of nowhere. Now, it would be important that Anna take her depression medication as prescribed if she missed doses or took them sporadically or suddenly stopped taking them altogether. It could dramatically affect her mood and increase her risk of self-harm. Well, Austin was panicking, and 2 days after he was taken from the school, Theo was seen on security footage for the last time at about 10 in the morning. Now, Anna, on the other hand, was making phone calls. About 1:30 in the afternoon, she called a few of her family members where she reassured them that both she and Theo were fine and there wasn't any trouble. She didn't call Austin, of course. Theo's voice was heard in the background of one of the calls saying he was hungry. And from the sound of his voice, it seemed like everything was okay. But nobody heard from him again. Anna went to great lengths to make sure Austin couldn't find him. Withdrawing Theo from school unexpectedly to staying at one resort for a single night before moving on to another, wanted to make sure he wouldn't be able to catch up with him. Austin didn't receive one of the multiple phone calls she made to the family. Anna felt like she was in control of the situation. She had Theo, and frankly, she thought she was calling all the shots. And maybe she felt like she could control her family's reaction with reassurances, but she knew she wouldn't be able to control Austin's reaction about his son being taken. That night, Anna was spotted in a dollar store. Theo wasn't with her, but Anna bought some stationery and left. She also stopped by a grocery store that night. The next day, the inn's employees found Anna's body. She had taken her own life by ingesting enough antihistamines to overdose, as well as cutting her own wrist and neck. But inside that room, there was no sign of Theo anywhere. In fact, there were a lot of things missing. For one thing, Anna's cell phone, which she had used to call her family, was nowhere to be found. And the clothes she wore when checking out at the resort were gone. Also missing was Theo's Spider-Man backpack, his toys and clothes and car seat. You know, cell phones have become one of the best pieces of evidence in solving crimes, as they're not only a way to track somebody's location, but the text and other data are stored and usually retrievable, even if somebody deletes the information from their phone. Police and prosecutors often require cell phone records to put together a timeline of events and get other vital evidence. With Theo's disappearances and Anna's reactions to take her own life are well thought out and planned. The fact her cell phone was missing could mean that she deliberately hid it to avoid her location being traced. Might have been evidence on her clothes and Theo's things relating to his disappearance, so she destroyed or hid those as well. Again, she went to great lengths to avoid Theo ever being found. Now, she did leave one final note, along with 2 cryptic letters she sent in the mail. One to her mother, but if investigators were hoping to find any answers, they only came up with more questions. In the letter, she claimed that she had given Theo to people who cared about him, never said who they were. Also wrote that nobody would ever find him, and she was right. Legally, nobody can just give their child to somebody else. The letters might have been a slight deviation from original plan since she didn't buy stationery until the previous night. She might not have originally planned to leave a note, or it could be as simple as her forgetting to bring paper with her from home. The reference to giving Theo to people who cared about him might have had a cryptic meaning. He was in heaven with angels, rather than literally meaning she gave him to an actual person. You know, at first, investigators hoped Theo really had been dropped off somewhere safe and believed that the car was a sign he was being taken care of, till they found out that Theo's grandmother had the car with her for a week before he went missing. Investigators quickly grew desperate to find any trace of the boy. Turned to the only clue they had, Anna's vehicle, and inside they found something undoubtedly made their hearts sink, blood that matched the Theo's. Now, it wasn't necessarily sinister, as the young boy apparently had a nosebleed while in the seat for some months earlier. It was another dead end, but the car was also covered in dirt. Police tested the soil and grass they found in order to trace exactly where the vehicle had been. And the place where Anna dropped him off, hopefully was somebody who was taking care of him, also didn't help narrow down the search. All evidence pointed to one thing. Anna had carefully planned this. Months before going missing, she'd taken 2 trips to the same area. Maybe scoping out somebody to leave her son with, or even to do something far more unthinkable like find a place to hide the body. Austin, though he was shocked to learn that Anna had taken her own life, said that he just couldn't imagine she'd ever hurt the boy. Anna might have been trying to punish Austin to get back at him after their recent arguments about taking Theo. And given her history of depression, she might have even felt that they could use her mental health against her in court. And she'd get less than 50-50 custody of their child after the divorce. Might have been considering taking her own life for some time because of her struggles with depression. Or once she decided to do it, she might have realized she didn't want to leave Theo behind without a mother. It seemed somewhat unlikely that she gave Theo to another person. She was apparently close with several members of her own family, so it would have been surprising that she'd keep Theo from them and give him to a stranger. And if she killed Theo, it might have been her sick and delusional way of bringing him with her. Now, there weren't any more leads for years, and apparently her cell phone was found by the side of the road. Once again, there were no clues in the area or on the phone. After more time passed, something that everybody wondered was why Theo himself never came forward in all the years he was missing. If it was okay, surely he'd been curious about his past or would want to put his family's minds at ease. Maybe Anna told him something that kept him quiet. It was impossible to know for sure. His father maintained his son was alive. It looked like Theo was gone forever, though, and the family began to lose hope. And something truly unexpected happened. Years later, a young man was found wandering. When he was approached, he was extremely confused. But he said one thing very clearly. He said his name was Theo. He said he'd just escaped from his captors who'd been holding him hostage for years. He said he'd been repeatedly abused and he just wanted to go home. Well, authorities, of course, thought Theo had finally been found, but something wasn't quite right. At the hospital, a young man refused to be fingerprinted, eventually agreed to give a DNA sample. And that was when it was discovered this young man was not Theo at all, but 23-year-old Peter, who had just been released from prison before he was found on the side of the road, had a history of claiming to be a victim of child trafficking. They charged him with both identity theft and lying to federal investigators. During his sentence, he struck a plea deal and sentenced to spend 2 years in prison. Well, he likely made up stories like that because he enjoyed the attention he got. He enjoyed tricking people and wanted to see how long he could get away with it. Though that strange twist was certainly astonishing, Peter lied and brought false hope to the distraught Theo's family. Now, Theo is still missing. It doesn't appear the authorities are any closer to finding out what happened to him than they were at the time. Now, is it possible to literally disappear? Well, some say yes, some say no. I will point out that there have been a number of cases of people vanishing and never being found. In spite of the fact that there's cameras literally everywhere you go these days, there's still areas where you can go and literally vanish. Well, let's talk about the case of Matrice Richardson. Matrice Richardson was born to Lettice Sutton and Michael Richardson in 1985 in Covina, California. When her parents divorced, she was very little. Her mother remarried to Larry Sutton, whom she ended up calling her father. Her biological father, Michael, had been in prison for a brief stint while Matrice was still very young. But as soon as he became a free man, he nurtured a relationship with his daughter, a relationship that improved as Matrice got older. Now, Matrice was described as a model child, smart, beautiful, well-mannered. 2008, she graduated from college in California State University with a degree in psychology. And thanks to her brilliant results, she pursued a graduate program. But before she started, she began an internship program with Rhonda Hampton, a close family friend who worked as a clinical psychologist. During the period of this internship, Matrice lived in South LA with her great-grandmother, Mildred Hughes. To raise funds for her graduate program, she worked nights at a as a go-go dancer in a nightclub, also competed in the beauty pageants. But in 2009, things fell apart in Matrice's perfect life. First, she broke off ties with her girlfriend, Tissa Moon, who she'd been dating for 2 years. And then her mental condition, bipolar disorder, don't you know, got incredibly worse. So bad she began sending the strangest things to her mother. One of her final Facebook posts, she wrote, "I just want to sleep, but you know me and my baffling ideas. Let me see where they take me." Well, the post seemed harmless, but knowing the condition Matrice had, Lettuce immediately tried to reach her daughter. But Matrice refused to pick up the phone. On September 16, 2009, Matrice suddenly picks up her car keys and drives all the way out to Malibu from South L.A. Arrived in that city around dinner time. Arrived at a high-end restaurant in Malibu, and as soon as she parked her car, the valet knew something was wrong. The valet mentioned that she was distraught and was talking about so many things at the same time. Particularly, she talked about avenging the death of Michael Jackson. Seeing that something was wrong, the valet offered to park her car and help her to the restaurant. In the restaurant, she walked to random tables and joined them, interrupted private conversations, made bizarre assumptions. In one instance, she told the people here to listen she was from Mars. Most of the people at the restaurant didn't bother to call the police since she didn't appear to pose an immediate threat to anybody. Finally, she ordered a Kobe steak and an Ocean Breeze cocktail. The cost of that meal amounted to $89, and Matrice couldn't pay, and the restaurant asked if anybody they could call to sort out the bill. Well, Matrice called her great-grandmother Mildred, but since that woman lacked a fax machine, she couldn't pay over the phone. Eventually, the manager called the police and quickly arrived to salvage the situation. And this is where things took a turn for the worse. When the police arrived, they had the impression Matrice was drunk because of her erratic behavior. But after they used a breathalyzer on her, they realized she was as sober as a judge. Which doesn't say much, because I know some judges who've been drunk on their rears. Still, the police arrested her on grounds of defrauding an innkeeper and marijuana possession, even though what they found in her car was barely an ounce. Well, at the station, Matrice's car was impounded along with all their belongings. About 11 p.m., she was booked at the station. There she made 4 phone calls to her great-grandmother, but later that morning, her great-grandmother would say she received no calls from Matrice, and the phone company had no record of the calls. Also, the police had no record of the call because of faulty recording equipment. Fortunately, after a while, Matrice's mother found out about the arrest and called the police. Says that she'd come to pick Matrice up despite the 50-minute drive if they released her that night. She suggested it'd be best to pick her up in the morning, as she had a younger daughter she couldn't leave all alone. And just as she was about to drop the call, Matrice joked with the deputy, saying, "I hate to wake up in the morning and see a report girl lost somewhere and her head chopped off." Of course, the deputy laughed it off and assured Matrice they wouldn't release Matrice until that morning. About 12:30 in the morning, assured of her daughter's safety, Matrice bid the deputy good night and ended the call. Just 5 minutes after she went off the phone, Matrice was released from the custody of police. Officers told her she could wait in the lobby and wait for her mother to show up. But Matrice's manic episode had intensified, which impaired her thinking. Minutes later, she was released and she was seen leaving the police station. Stuck out in the middle of nowhere without a jacket, a mobile phone, or a purse, she began walking into the night. Believed she was headed toward the Santa Monica Mountains, but this marked the last time anybody saw or heard about her. About 5:30 in the morning the next day, Lettice called the station and asked about her daughter, and her shock knew no bounds when she was informed her daughter had been released earlier. Shaken and confused and angry, she asked that the deputies file a missing persons report. But the officers argued that Matrice hadn't been missing for over 24 hours, making it impossible to file a report. A few hours later, a man named Bill Smith called the police to report a woman who had been wandering his backyard at about 6:30 in the morning. Smith described her as a slim black woman with afro hair and asked if she was okay, and she responded by saying she was just taking a rest. By the time Smith confirmed she was harmless and stepped outside to investigate, Matrice had disappeared into the mountains behind the house. After this report, the police began to investigate into the case. They began with Matrice's car, which is still in their custody, and found her diary. In the diary, they discovered that she probably hadn't slept in 5 days, a factor that would have contributed heavily to her manic behavior. And while this happened, her mother didn't stop calling the sheriff's department, trying her best to file a missing persons report as quickly as possible. Eventually, when the report was filed, the case was transferred to the Los Angeles Police Department. Sheriff's Department explained they had better resources to tackle the case, but what was failed to be mentioned was the fact that the LAPD is an hour away from the spot where Matrice actually disappeared. And before the search began, the family was told that an intensive search party, including helicopter search dogs and hundreds of agents, would investigate Matrice's disappearance. But when the day of the search arrived, only 4 deputies were delegated to the neighborhood. Not only did the search start 3 days after she disappeared, but it ended on the same day before it even got dark. Seeing that they could barely rely on the authorities, the family took matters into their own hands. They distributed flyers and made posters and organized volunteer search parties to find Matrice. Seeing this could instill a bad reputation for his office, the sheriff reignited the search efforts for Matrice. But the family had already lost faith in the police, don't you know? Frustrated with the police and increasingly worried about the state of his daughter, Michael Richardson called the mayor of Malibu and explained everything about Matrice's disappearance to him. Now, it's amazing he got to the mayor of Malibu, which wasn't even his town. I can't get to the mayor of El Paso. And I've tried numerous times, but he's too important to talk to me. Immediately, the mayor, Andy Stern, announced a $15,000 reward for anybody who could provide useful information. This time that a real search began for Matrice. Search involved over 336 trained searchers, along with trained search dogs and helicopters, all focused on the important mission of finding Matrice alive. Unfortunately, the search showed no signs of positivity, but this didn't dissuade her father, who believed his daughter was out there somewhere, waiting for him to find her. Later on, Matrice's family discovered the police deputies had suddenly lost a tape that might tilt the direction of the investigation. When the pressure from the family and the public reached an all-time high, they released the footage of Matrice leaving the station. We showed the police had released her, despite her mother's pleas to keep her till morning. This information, Matrice later filed a case against Los Angeles County for negligence. August 9, 2010, the discovery everybody had been dreading finally became a reality. For over 11 months of intense searching, park rangers who were investigating the growth of illegal marijuana in the mountainous terrain of the Dark Canyon discovered the remains of a woman. August 13th, 4 days after the initial discoveries, reported that the remains found belonged to none other than Matrice Richardson. Eventually, the family made it to the scene of Matrice's death and set up a memorial there. Also, the family was rewarded $900,000 for wrongful death because of negligence. But the family still wants to know who murdered their beautiful daughter and won't stop until the killer is brought to justice. That case is still open today and being investigated. You know, interestingly enough, as happened when we had a robbery here, the police have so many cases they really don't care. And if they've got to go investigate, well, that's time-consuming and takes a lot of resources. I even got the thief on video, and they couldn't find him. Well, we got another case about a mysterious disappearance. A mother called 911 saying that she couldn't find her 5-year-old daughter anywhere. Said they were at a park, and from there she went missing. The young mother, named was Norma, watched as her 2 children excitedly jumped out of their car, ice cream in hand. They ran for the playground, and she followed them, making her way to the swings that hadn't been visible from her vehicle. In the blink of an eye, every parent's worst nightmare became reality. A little girl vanished into thin air. Well, the family settled in a small city surrounded by vast rural farming land in New Jersey. Norma, 19 years old, was the mother of 5-year-old Dulcie and 3-year-old Manuel. Norma's parents and little sister, 8-year-old Camilla, lived near Norma. According to Norma, her parents loved the children as if they were their own. It was an ordinary late summer day, about 4 in the afternoon. Footage from a local store showed Norma, her sister Camilla, and her 2 young children picking out frozen dessert. After grabbing their ice cream, they headed to the popular city park near the high school. park comprised about 1,100 acres of land, including walking trails and picnic areas and playing fields. Dulcie and Manuel made a beeline for the playground. Norma and Camilla stayed behind to watch the children from the car. And this normal afternoon soon took on a turn for the worse, as somebody else had been watching as the children played. From her car, most of the playground could be seen, but based on Norma's account, a small hill hid the swings. Not long after their arrival, Norma and Camilla noticed the children no longer visible. So they got out of their vehicle and approached the area about 30 yards from where they'd parked. When they arrived at the swings, Manuel was standing there and in tears. His ice cream was on the ground, and he was alone. His older sister, Dulcie, was nowhere to be found. When asked where Dulcie had gone, Manuel pointed to a nearby building. Norma assumed Dulcie was just hiding. When they made their way to the buildings, though, Dulcie wasn't there. That's when the terrifying reality of the situation set in. Dulcie was gone, and the harrowing search for Norma's daughter began. Norma frantically questioned those close by, wondering if they'd seen her little girl. Horrifyingly, a few bystanders stated that Dulcie had been chased by two men near the buildings that Manuel had pointed out. Norma promptly called her mother and brother, who lived a short distance from the park, and enlisted his help. She asked him to bring his dog and try to locate the little girl. She had no way of knowing who they might be dealing with, and they briefly continued the frenzied search. With no success, Norma made her frantic 911 call, did her best to relay information and answer questions posed by the dispatcher. Her voice was shaking, though. She told him her girl was wearing flowery pants and some heels, and police arrived at the scene, and an extensive search for the park began. Immediately, dozens of officers and bloodhounds were deployed. Search extended to the surrounding area, including the nearby neighborhood, the lake, and the wooded area. However, not so much as a shred of evidence was collected. They quickly issued an alert. The key suspect was described as light-skinned, possibly Hispanic man, about 5 to 6 feet tall. Believed he'd led Dulcie into a red van. Flood of attempts came in. Authorities couldn't locate a red van that had any connection with the disappearance, though. 2 weeks passed since Dulcie's disappearance. Norma, who'd been criticized for patient behavior, spoke out for the first time, begging the community for their continued help. About 3 months after Dulcie was last seen, law enforcement and city officials took flyers door to door and reminded the public Dulcie had yet to be found. They pleaded for anybody who had information to come forward. After an additional month had passed, family and friends had become discouraged. Their interest in Dulcie's case had waned, and it seemed the community had mostly given up trying to find the little girl. Family spokesperson tried to appeal to the mayor for more help. By that time, the reward money had climbed to $75,000, and everybody hoped the funds would entice enough to gather the missing pieces of the puzzle. Unfortunately, the public had nothing useful to contribute to the investigation. After 6 months, a series of eerie coincidences and occurrences came into sight. An unknown source sent cryptic letters to a variety of locations. Recipients were in both New Jersey and Ohio. A family spokesperson received one such letter early that month. Somebody postmarked in Ohio, and in the envelope were slips of paper with phrases. They appeared to be written by a child, but when the letter came to the spokesperson's personal residence, it brought along with it a new sense of trepidation, and she feared for the safety of her own family. The letter to the spokesperson didn't specifically mention Dulcie, but a string of others received alarming. The letter read, 76 truck stop, dead-end street entrance, woods, please look. Some believe the letter could be the key to finding that little girl. A multi-day extensive search at a 30 to 40-acre wooded area is quickly completed with drones and cadaver dogs. The vast area was enough for clues. It was tough to find clues as well, but no evidence was found. Despite the thorough search, one of the other peculiar letters was sent to the library in Ohio. On 2 pages, it included details about the investigation into Dulcie's disappearance, and another letter was received by an ice cream shop in Township, Ohio. The letters were similar and believed to have originated from the same source, but they served only as another setback because it didn't lead to Dulcie. The months continued to pass, and soon a full year had gone by without Dulcie's return. Norma expressed her gratitude to the many members of the community for their continued support. To the skeptics, she repeated she and her family had no involvement in the disappearance. She also voiced her regrets about letting the children leave her sight that day. An FBI special agent revisited the case. He explained that approximately an hour earlier, the area had been busy and chaotic. The abductor is likely lurking or blending in and waiting for an opportunity to strike. Special agent added that there was likely witnesses who observed the abductor and haven't yet come forward because they didn't realize how important the information was to the case. Or maybe they were just afraid. At the time of Dulcie's 7th birthday, 19 months after she vanished, the police chief assured the public that various law enforcement agencies were continuing to collaborate and working on developments, though he didn't elaborate what they might be. Dulcie's father, who'd been deported to Mexico, had been silent until he posted a video, apparently a tribute to Dulcie on her birthday. Compilation of music footage of a younger Dulcie and her father. Investigators believe that Dulcie is still alive, and they're going to continue to assume that she is. The case seemed to have struck a chord, while many tugging at their heartstrings and making it impossible to forget about that little girl. Online sleuths offer a variety of speculation about what might have happened to Dulcie. Some surmise that though the abduction was an unthinkable act, it was simply a crime of opportunity. Maybe Dulcie was just in the wrong place at the wrong time when the perpetrator struck when it was clear that no other adults had their eyes on the child. Others speculate the father might have arranged for Dulcie to be transported back to Mexico to be with him. But the FBI interviewed Dulcie's father shortly after her disappearance and described him as cooperative. There'd been no known custody dispute over Dulcie. There's skeptics, those who believe Norma knows more than she lets on, but there's no way to measure how behavior could appear after a traumatic events occurred like that. Many have speculated she has knowledge regarding Dulcie's whereabouts, but there's no evidence to support that. Law enforcement has never named Norma as a suspect. People can respond to trauma in different ways. Some people may express their distress outwardly, maybe by crying or sobbing, other high emotional responses. Other people internalize their pain outwardly, showing almost nothing while inwardly feeling great turmoil. Norma may have responded this way. Well, we don't have enough time to start a new topic, and I do want to talk about something that came to my attention yesterday. I was out on the local post, went to the commissary, and I saw a bunch of signs that talked about the fact that soldiers would qualify for SNAP benefits, food stamps, don't you know? And I started thinking, these are the people that defend this country. We don't pay them enough that they don't have to go on food stamps. I was behind one lady, well-dressed lady, in line. This was several weeks ago. And I was fascinated to watch her pay for her purchases with a handful of food stamps. Now, most people use EBT cards, but there's still folks, I'm told, use actual stamps that I haven't seen in some time. But I find it totally reprehensible. We've got billions of dollars that get funneled into scam operations like are happening in Minnesota. We've got soldiers and their families on every military post in this country. You have to rely on government food stamps to feed the families. That doesn't say much about how we take care of our defenders. It's something you really need to think about next time you go to the polls and there's discussions about on the ballots about all these various programs of giving money here and giving money there. How about we use some of that money to take care of the soldiers that defend this country? I never saw that when I was on active duty. I was in South America for quite a bit of that, and then at Fort Benning. And I heard no one complain about the fact that the pay was low, and it wasn't anywhere near what it is now. But even today, young soldiers, many of them just starting out. And then as I was leaving post, I saw a junior enlisted food bank. If things are so bad, the junior enlisted has to make use of a food bank. In addition to food stamps and SNAP cards, that really ought to tell you something about the situation. And we've not too long ago we took some things out to post to their version of Goodwill, and I saw people coming out of the food bank with armloads of food. So it's used, no question about that. These were young families. Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow and talk about more strange topics. But until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.